Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here at Turning Technologies Canada and to participate in this webinar. It's a beautiful sunny day out today, but we're going to be talking about things that can kind of ruin your day. 5 steps of emergency preparedness. We're going to go through the seminar very quickly. We have a lot of slides, a lot of information to cover, and therefore it's important that if you think of something that you can apply, you come up with a thought or an idea or a task, that you make a note of it so that come the end of the session you can take a step towards enhancing your preparedness. First of all, I'd like to ask a question. Does your organization, your office, your facility have an emergency preparedness plan? If you can just check 1 for yes, 2 for no, or 3 for I have no idea, because some truly don't have any idea, that would be great. I look forward to your response here. Awesome. Well, it's great to see that most of you have a plan. Most organizations will never admit to not having a plan. They will have something on paper to some degree or another. And as always, we do find within the organization sometimes that plan isn't communicated very well. Now, do you have a business continuity plan? 1 for yes, 2 for no, or 3, I don't know what that is. Take a moment and enter your response here. So about half the participants have a business continuity plan. Or close to half. We've got 29% that don't, and another 29% that aren't sure what a business continuity plan is. So we will go through and we'll take a look at those. When we're talking about an emergency plan, we're talking about a plan that deals with the immediate incident. So it's a plan that gives you the steps and the procedures to take in order to protect people, property, and the environment at the time. A business continuity plan, on the other hand, focuses on the business of the organization, the ability of the organization to recover from the crisis and return to normal operations following it. Basically, what a business continuity plan ensures is that you continue to provide service to your clients, that you continue to apply employment to your staff. And ultimately, for any private organization, it's critical that they continue to create profit. So in a crisis, if they happen to lose the continuity of their processes, their ability to serve the clients, their ability to employ people, they obviously lose the ability to create profit, which creates a significant issue ongoing in their long-term ability to operate. So we've got some yeses and nos, but let's take a look. On a scale of 1 to 5, how prepared are your staff and the organization to respond to an emergency? So 1 for not very, 5 for highly prepared. Let us know what you think here. We see some responses coming in. So we've got quite the mix of everything from not very prepared to, pretty well prepared, with most in the median. It's interesting because most people, most organizations haven't had a crisis in the short term that they've been able to refer to. But if they take a look back into their memory, often they'll find some issues that have caused them some problems, and we'll go through some of those right now. On a scale of 1 to 5, how prepared is your organization to reestablish operations after a crisis, say, destroys your building? Again, 1, not very. 5, highly prepared. So if the facility you're listening to this webinar in right now happen to be destroyed today, how likely are you to be up and back in business tomorrow or Monday the next week? So we've got most people in the median. So that's good that they feel that they could be up and running fairly quickly. Organizations with multiple sites are often more able to get up and running quickly because they can just move to a secondary site. Small organizations with a single site often face the greatest challenges. Here's a question: do you have an emergency preparedness plan at home? Yes or no? 1 for yes, 2 for no. And we'll talk about why this is critical for a business to ensure that their employees have a plan as well. So it's great to see that a number of people have emergency preparedness plans at home, but unfortunately a lot don't. And it's important in that from an employer's perspective that you have a plan at home, because if you are facing a crisis at home, you're not going to be much use to them in the employment world. So what is your definition of an emergency? One of the first steps, we're going to be talking about 5 steps today. One of the first steps is what we call a HIRA, or a hazard identification and risk analysis. And what the HIRA does is it walks you through a process of identifying what are the potential risks or potential hazards at the location where you are. Or, because an emergency doesn't necessarily have to be within your site, it could be a neighboring facility. For example, one of our clients is a healthcare facility and they're right next door to a high school. And that high school has had a number of gun calls. They're in a major urban center. And so those situations at the neighboring facility have a direct impact on their operations, or the ability of people to be able to come and go, and the safety of their clients, their patients, their visitors, their staff, etc. Once we identify the potential risks, then we have to walk through and analyze how serious those risks are. I wonder how many of you buy lottery tickets or know what the odds of winning 649 are. Well, the odds of winning 649 are about 1 in 13 million of actually winning. The odds of getting struck by lightning in Canada are about 1 in a million. In other words, you're much more likely to get struck by lightning than you are to win the lottery. So what we do is we take a look at what those risks are. Now, in your particular facility, lightning may not be a significant risk. It's a potential hazard because it's happening every summer, but the risk, because you're in an insulated building that's been designed and prepared for lightning strikes, has provided some protection for you. We'll take a look at an automobile manufacturing plant in Waterloo region last year, where one of the employees was walking from the parking lot to the front door and was struck and killed by lightning. So it does happen, and it can happen on a work site. So some of the major risks. This photographs of a fire that destroyed a business in Huntsville, putting dozens of employees out of work. The facility was totally destroyed and never reopened. basically it closed, and all the employees were left unemployed. This particular fire is of a facility in Orillia, which a care facility which left 4 people dead and several critically injured. The owners of this particular facility were charged and convicted for not having met the fire code. So there are additional risks in addition to the deaths and injuries that did occur. We also have community emergencies. Some of you may recall Sunrise Propane, which is this photograph. Now, Sunrise Propane obviously was a site that was impacted, but all of the businesses and organizations that were within a kilometer of this site were also impacted, in that 20,000 people in the immediate area and all of the businesses in the immediate area were also evacuated, some of them for many days. Transportation. How many of you have employees that travel to and from client sites or travel on business? What is your plan if they happen to be in an accident or involved in an accident? Whether or not injuries are involved, what are your abilities to, what's your plan to deal with that? These photographs are from the Peterborough flood a couple years ago, which had a dramatic impact on businesses. And of course, last year we had the significant flooding in Calgary and southern Alberta, as well as a major one-day storm in Toronto that caused some significant disruption. And long-term power failures. Many people don't think of power failures as being a significant risk, but when they do last a length of time, they can have some long-term impacts on your business or organization. And keep in mind that a power failure just doesn't affect the lights. It doesn't just affect, your heat or your computers. It also impacts your electronic commerce as well. Your ATMs go down, your ability to get gas at the gas station, because gasoline pumps are run on electricity. There's all kinds of downflow impacts from a long-term power failure. Outbreaks, epidemics, and pandemics. So an outbreak is something that is local. An epidemic is something that runs in a geographical area, and of course pandemic is considered something that's a worldwide impact. The photographs at the top are from SARS, which was a significant event in Canadian history. Many businesses, sites, entire organizations had to be shut down when one employee was identified as being at work who potentially had the SARS virus. The photographs from the bottom are from the H1N1 outbreak a couple years ago, which didn't turn out to be such a major event. Matter of fact, it had a lower impact as far as mortality and serious illness than the flu does on an average year. However, the media panic created huge lineups with people desperate to get flu immunizations and get taken care of. And it had impacts on businesses throughout areas where there was the threat or perceived threat of the influenza. And we're walking right now into summer storms. This slide is just to show you that they occur anywhere and everywhere. These are tornado strikes, including Sudbury in 1970, where 3 people were killed in a tornado. But it's not always tornadoes that come with severe summer storms or spring storms. April the 25th, 2009 was the highest straight line winds ever recorded in Canadian history occurred on that day, with a storm blowing through and creating some significant damage. For those of you in Ontario, you might remember August 20th, 2009. Ontario averages somewhere between 15 and 20 tornadoes a year. On that particular day, 21 tornadoes roared through the province, killing an 11-year-old boy at a day camp, but also destroying numerous businesses and homes on that day, ranging from Vaughan to West Grey, all across the southern part of the province. And we're hosting this today from the city of Barrie, so we can't talk about tornadoes without talking about the deadliest tornado in Canadian history, which was the Barrie tornado. It spread from Shelburne all the way to Barrie, killing 12 people and destroying many businesses. Although we're getting out of the winter storm seasons, you know, we still have to be reminded that they are a risk that we do need to plan for. Workplace violence. If you're in Ontario, you're familiar with Bill 168, which requires every employer to have a workplace violence policy and have a plan in place to protect employees from potential threats from domestic violence as well. Workplace violence is the number 2 major risk for employers for dying in criminal cause. Driving accidents are the number 1, transportation accidents. Toxic environments. You don't have to be producing a toxic chemical or in order to be at potential risk. Transportation of safe. Oh, here we go. Transportation of Dangerous Goods Guide gives a 1.6 kilometer radius as the primary evacuation area for a major chemical spill, either at a plant or at a transportation link. So if you're within 1.6 kilometers of a major highway, a railway, or a major chemical plant, you are within a potential evacuation zone. Terrorist threats. This is an exercise that we conducted couple years ago, but although most people think that Canada, we're very safe here, and we are, there still is that underlying threat. Medical emergencies can occur in any workplace at any time, and this is just some of our staff's work during exercises. I had mentioned earlier that the impact does not have to be direct at your particular facility. It just has to be nearby. Something that's happening within the same complex or something that's happening within a number of buildings away can have some significant impacts on your facility. A fire in a, if you're in a strip plaza or a multi-site facility, a fire in another tenant can put you out of business or put your site out of business for a significant period of time. So once you identify the potential risks and analyze what the actual impact on you may be, the second step is really to take a look at the prevention and mitigation strategies that you can take to help reduce or prevent that type of emergency. So can we prevent it from happening in the first place? Or can we do something that's going to help reduce the risks when it actually does happen. So how do we prevent an emergency from occurring? Well, the number one way, and the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office has come out and said the number one way of preventing fire emergencies, for example, is through education. Teaching people to be fire safe. And that education may come through policies that you implement, and it's not just fire, but on all of your potential risks, providing safety education, developing policies that reduce or prevent the risk. Your facility design or your building design and protective devices. How many times do we hear of cars, for example, driving through a convenience store window or a donut shop window into the building where, you know, something like bullards can be a protective device that could stop some of those accidents from occurring or having impact on your particular facility. So we have prevention, but we also have mitigation. And what mitigation is if the incident actually occurs, when it does occur, how can we reduce the impacts? So early alerts, smoke detectors, for example, evacuation of the area, immediate response, whether that is immediate response of an internal team. Many of our clients have internal response teams, or whether that's an immediate response of, you know, your fire department, your EMS services, police, etc. Again, design of your facilities to contain whatever the emergency is, and having the appropriate insurance in place. And you may say, well, you know, that's after the fact, but it's also mitigation is part of that business continuity end, and that insurance component is critical in getting your business back up and running and covering the costs that are required in getting your facility back up and running or your company back up and running. So a quick question. Is the smoke detector prevention or mitigation? Is it preventing the fire or is it mitigating the fire? Well, it's mitigation, right? It's not preventing the incident from occurring, but it's advising you early on when it does occur. It's providing you an early alert. The third step in the emergency preparedness process is developing the procedures for the response or the business recovery, the policies and procedures. So we have a number of different types. We've already talked about the prevention and mitigation policies and procedures. We also have response procedures. What are we going to do when? So what are we going to do when the emergency occurs? What are we going to do when the power fails? What are we going to do when the robbery takes place? What are we going to do when the transportation accident occurs? What are we going to do when, you know, a medical emergency occurs? So you can take each of the risks that you've identified in the HIRA and create a response procedure. It's important that you involve representatives from each department within your organization in developing these, because each department may have very different needs, very different responses. So we work, for example, with a lot of healthcare facilities, hospitals, long-term care facilities. Well, a procedure for the maintenance department will be much different than the procedure for the nursing department, as will be their needs, what their initial goals are. So when you're developing your policies and procedures, it's good to get a well-rounded input into your process. Once we've developed the procedures and the policies, then we need to follow through with training. And here's where Turning Technologies, your training experts, becomes involved, because if your staff don't know what to do, there was a number of you who said you didn't know whether there was an emergency plan in place at your facility. If your staff don't know what to do, they need to be trained. They need to be aware of the policies. They need to be aware of their basic responsibilities, both in prevention and mitigation, as well as in the response. So there's a number of ways of doing training. First is a basic presentation, presenting the information. Doing it in a classroom environment where it's interactive, where you have opportunity for people to ask questions and get into discussion-based situations. Then what we have are two different types of exercises. The first type of exercise is what we'll call a discussion-based exercise. This is when you throw out a specific scenario, and people with the various responsibilities are expected to be able to walk you through what their interaction would be. You might have, for example, a group. Say, for example, you've had a fire within your organization, within your facility. So you might have the various representatives get together, you throw that scenario out, and they would all talk about their individual roles and responsibilities and how they would interact with each other. So that's a discussion-based exercise. An operational-based exercise is where the incident is recreated. So you would create a scenario of a violence occurring within the workplace, or you would create a scenario of, well, for example, even just pulling the fire alarm and doing a fire drill. That's an operational-based exercise. So you get people into the flow of actually taking action and recreating things. For the people involved in the IT world, this is where you would simulate, the computer systems going down and actually having to go in and use the backup data, your offsite data, to restore the organization back to operations. These 4 steps of training are often done consecutively, based on people's needs and responsibilities. So we often start with presentations, then move into a classroom type atmosphere depending on the needs of your staff, your team, then move into discussion-based exercises, and then once you feel that they've got the plan, the procedures down, and they understand what their roles and responsibilities are, then you recreate the scenario and have them actually respond to it. For our presentation today, our 5th step is partnerships. And with a partnership, who do we need assistance in each of these other steps from? Who do we need assistance from to create our HIRA? Let me give you a couple quick ideas for your HIRA. Every municipality in Ontario, for example, must have a Community Emergency Management Coordinator, often called a CEMC. You can call your municipal office and say, who's responsible for emergencies in our community, and talk to them. Every municipality is required to do a HIRA to identify what the biggest risks in that community are. So you can call them and say, what are the bigger risks that we should be looking at? And can you provide us some assistance in preparing for those? So you have many communities across Canada will have those. Again, in Ontario, it's mandatory for every municipality to have a CEMC. So there's someone who can help you with the HIRA. and even give you ideas and suggestions with regards to the prevention and mitigation. But who else do you need prevention and mitigation strategies for? You know, maybe you talk to your electrician to take a look at your electrical systems, the potential need for generators, that sort of thing. Maybe you talk to your plumber with regards to your sump pump systems and ensuring that they're operating properly and you've got proper drainage in case you get a major downpour. You may talk to your landlord, for example, in those prevention and mitigation things. So that's part of your partnership. You may also talk to other businesses that are in similar situations close by. You know, work together. Who do you need assistance from in developing your policies and procedures? You know, your fire department will be glad to help you when it comes to things like fire emergencies. But what about the other emergencies? Who can provide you some of those tools to assist you in developing? The training program. Obviously, one of your partners is Turning Technologies in developing your training program. Once you've got that policies and procedures, those processes developed, you need to be able to communicate that to your staff in such a way that they understand it, that they have a feel for it. They may not have to know every single line item, but they need to know where to access the information. And of course, for the urgent things, they need to know how to get out, where your meeting area is, etc. Who are your response partners? So your response partners might be, you know, fire department, EMS, police, but your response partners might also be your local general contractor or whoever maintains your building so that they can arrive quickly. There's a number of companies out there, they call themselves disaster restoration companies, that will come out and work with your insurance company. They're one of your partners in the response and recovery component. Of course, recovery includes everything that is required to get your business back up and running. If your business is not back up and running, you know, then you really haven't recovered. You haven't maintained that profit-making ability, the ability to serve your clients and maintain employment for your staff. Part of that process is to do an evaluation and assessment of your current plans. What are your current policies and procedures? What's your current training? What staff skills do you currently have to be able to respond to different types of emergencies? What are the communication processes? How do you communicate with your staff? How do your staff communicate with their families? How do you communicate with your clients? How do your clients communicate with you when you're in an emergency? What is your interaction with other agencies, your partners? So we like to sit down with organizations and evaluate where they're currently and then what areas where they need to respond. I'm going to take this moment to talk a little bit about family and home emergency plans, because we're talking about the communication part here. If your staff are worried about their family at home, they're not going to be much use to you. If your staff are impacted directly by an emergency, right, they're going to lose their ability to work with you. Now, for some of, obviously, we have a connection with our staff. We want to ensure that they're safe. But what can we do to assist them in being better prepared at home? And if they're better prepared at home, they will also be better prepared at work. Many of the major risks that you're going to face in your workplace are going to be similar to the major risks that they're going to face at home. So when we talk about, for example, communicating with family members, it's important not only to have an evacuation area for your staff, but where is your meeting area if they can't get to the parking lot because the area is being sealed off for 2 or 3 blocks? Where's the meeting area? This becomes a particularly serious issue with schools when we're working with schools, whether they're elementary or high schools or even nursery, preschools, and our college and university clients. Where do you take accountability if you have to evacuate a distance from the site? So we always recommend that you have more than one meeting area. One, obviously, that's immediately outside if you have to evacuate the building for a fire, but also if you have to clear the area, have a secondary area that's set aside a distance away that everyone knows where they're to meet. And you should have that with your family emergency plan too. If you're at work and something impacts the neighborhood where your home is and your children have to evacuate, where are you going to meet them? What is the location? And if you're, for example, if you're something happens at a school, and you can imagine the chaos when hundreds or even thousands of students and parents and the media all converge on the same site at the same time. Having a well thought out plan as to where you're going to meet and how you're going to meet, who you're going to communicate with. The emergency planning process is a continual process. Your hazards and your risks change, information changes, new tenants move into the building that you're occupying down the hall. As risks change, there's going to be different prevention and mitigation requirements. As technology changes, there's going to be different prevention and mitigation strategies. Procedures should always be evaluated to see where they can be enhanced, where best practices can be gained from other situations. Training is a continual process. There's a reason why schools are mandated to have a fire drill every month. There's a reason why places like long-term care facilities are required to have 3 fire drills a month to get people into the process of reacting immediately as opposed to having to stop and pick up the manual and figure out what they're going to do. Revisiting those partnerships. The more you communicate with your partners, the stronger that relationship's going to be, and the better prepared you're going to be to work with them in the event of an emergency. And so it's an ongoing process. So going back to a previous question, on a scale now of 1 to 5, how prepared do you really think your business and staff are to respond to an emergency? Again, 1 for not very, 5 for highly prepared. And we'll just take a moment here so that you can provide us your comments. All right, so we're seeing that most organizations are feeling a little bit better prepared to deal with an emergency. There's a before and after. And on a scale of 1 to 5, how prepared is your business to reestablish operations after a crisis that destroys your building. Again, number 1 for not very, number 5 for highly prepared. You know, that could be a flood, that could be a fire, natural gas issue, summer storm, severe summer storm impacting your particular site. All right. So again, before and after, many people are feeling a little bit more comfortable now that they are prepared to deal with an emergency. What step can you take today? So I'd like you to write this down if you would. What step can you take today? And send us a message through the system. Send us a message and let us know what step you can take today to start the process of being better prepared. What one thing would help you and your organization face a crisis? All right, so those results will come out after, but it's important for you to write that down so that you can take that first step in moving forward. So a special thanks to our host today, Turning Technologies. Turning Technologies Canada has some amazing tools out there for training and getting your audience participating in the training process, which is going to allow them to have a much better understanding at the end of the day. If you would like a copy of our slide process or have any questions and follow-up, that we will take some questions here online. You can always contact us at the number or email on the screen.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Darryl. So one question we did have, I think you just answered there, was about whether you will be able to provide a copy of the presentation to the participants. So will that be a problem at all?
We would be very happy to. So send us an email or contact Turning Technologies Canada, and we will send out the presentation to you.
Okay, perfect. One other question here that came across. If we have no plans or policies in place, where do we start?
Well, again, you're going to start right at the very beginning, and that's identifying the potential risks or hazards that you may face. You need to identify them before you can start to develop a plan. And so you can sit down and take a look at what may impact, take a look outside, walk around your facility. For many of our clients, we recommend you just go to Google Maps. Take a look at what's, in the area. It was surprising after the Sunrise propane explosion how many people said that they didn't realize that there was this propane facility in the middle of the city. We live in communities that are diverse. We have rural communities with chemical plants in them. I know Drew is online from one of Turning Technologies clients, and not far from them they have a major chemical facility that poses a risk, and they're in a very rural area. So it doesn't matter whether you're in rural or urban. You need to take a look at what the risks around you are. Following the Vaughan tornadoes, people were saying, well, we didn't think tornadoes hit the city. We were in Vaughan. We thought that they happened, up north, north being Barrie. But a lot of people don't understand what their risks are. So it's talking to your community emergency management coordinator. It's doing some research yourself. It's talking to people who've lived in the area for a while and asking. But once you develop a list of what those risks are, then you can start to put in place procedures to deal with them.
Okay, perfect. And one other question here. What metrics help us to determine if the policies and procedures we have in place are actually adequate or effective?
We talked a little bit about the discussion-based exercises and the operational exercises. Those are the real tests that you can do to determine whether or not your procedures are effective. So you would pull out a procedure for a particular issue. Let's say, Environment Canada comes and says we have a severe thunderstorm warning with the potential of tornadoes. They come out at 10 o'clock in the morning and say that. I'm going to use Godrich as an example, the Godrich tornado. And then 12 minutes, ahead of the tornado strike, Environment Canada comes out and says, there's a tornado, it's visible, it's on the water, it's headed towards Godrich, take cover. Well, that warning came out 12 minutes in advance from Environment Canada. The problem was most people were not monitoring the weather or the warnings at the time. And how many of you do that when you're in those potentials? Well, there's lots of tools now. You can get those warnings by text message. You can get them on your computer. You can get them through the media. So you would sit down and say, okay, what would we do? What does our procedure say? How would we get those warnings? If it is coming, what are we going to do? Do we just sit at our desks and hope for the best? Is there a safer room that we go to? Do we have someone monitor the sky? What are your particular procedures? And then, of course, should there be damage, then what are the procedures for evacuation and recovery of your business? So it's doing those discussion-based and those trials to see how effective your processes actually are.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think that's kind of the key questions there that we had come in. Just so everybody that's currently on the call still, if you do have questions following this webinar, please feel free to submit them either directly to Darryl with the information that's on the screen right now, or feel free to submit them to us here at Turning Technologies as well, either at events@turningtechnologies.ca or training@turningtechnologies.ca, and we'd be more than happy to provide and forward along those responses. So again, Darryl, thank you very much for your time today. It was a great presentation. I know I personally learned quite a bit. Just before we do wrap up, I just wanted to mention it to everybody. We will be at the WSPS Partners in Prevention 2014 conference in Mississauga next week at booth 844. So for any of you that may be attending the show, feel free to pop by, say hi, and grab some information from us. So that concludes our webinar today. Thank you everybody for attending, and again, thank you very much, Darryl, and we'll talk to everybody again really soon.